I want to discuss your background because, you've had an unbelievable track record of success of building companies from scratch. So I want to learn a little bit more about you and kind of your background. So how did you get started in the industry?
Oh, I mean, you'd have to go way back to, my father owning a repair shop. I mean, I grew up in a repair shop, uh, literally since the day I was born. That's, if I wanted to hang out with my father, that's where I had to be, right? So
Got it.
I learned about cars and parts and from a very, very young age. And then he started an automotive dealership. So I learned about that process. And then he had a parts store after that. And so I learned every aspect of that business. And then he started importing parts. So I would go with him on, for all the holidays and whether it was summer break or winter break, I'd go with him on sourcing trips to Europe at the time. This was in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he needed someone to make a catalog for his business. So he was kind of looking around, well, who could do it, right? So he handed me the work, and he got me to do the catalog, which, didn't cost him anything. And I had a bunch of fun, frankly. It was back in the day when cutting and pasting was cutting and pasting.
Yeah. So how old were you then when you were doing that for your dad?
Oh, I made my first catalog for him for Alfa Ricambi was the name of the company in the 70s. I made that when I was 16 years old.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Nice.
then he sold that. That turned out to be a fairly successful business. He sold that. He actually started Auto Specialty in 1982. And then I actually reluctantly went along and only went along when my friend's father passed away and left him with some money. And he drugged me into that business, said, hey, come on, let's get involved. Let's help your dad out. And so I went along with it. And, that's,
Yeah.
helped my father build that business.
Got it. Now, was that like automotive components, like all sorts of components, or was it specifically braking, or what was that company?
Yeah, good question. Actually, we started out as a Repco WD. So back in the day, that included water pumps and belts and hoses. And of course, we were struggling mightily. And we said, well, look, what's selling here? And so we said, let's focus on brakes. And so we got rid of everything else and focused on the brakes. And it was really, what really launched it was that back in the day, and this was like 1983, we were working out of a Repco catalog, and I guess I can talk smack now because they're not in business, are they? Selling brakes. So it was 1983, and we're looking through the book, and we needed a part for, I remember it was like a 1980 Mercedes. It's like, wait, this is 3 years later, and they didn't have the part. So I said, well, we could do better, because back when my dad was importing, he was importing from people like Brembo and, Brody, or not Brody, they weren't around then, but Carr and all these different rotor suppliers,
Mm-hmm.
and they had it right there in their catalog. So we started contacting all these sources and started bringing parts in ourselves to service the needs of these customers that, couldn't even get these parts. And these are some basic parts.
Yeah. Wow.
And then it really got interesting for me anyway, when I think a year later, someone had come in, and I was working the counter, someone had come in and needed a master cylinder for a Toyota truck, and it was a split year. And so I pulled both parts off the shelf, and we opened up the boxes. He had his part. Well, the parts were the same. They were the exact same part in the box. And so that is what actually set a light bulb off, where I said, well, wait, how many more are like that? So I went throughout our entire inventory, pulled every part, tagged every part, opened up every part. And that's where I went ahead and rather than, and made my own catalog, because I saw we could consolidate a vast number of parts into one. And in some cases, there was one Toyota master cylinder that we took out 12 part numbers, where the entire industry had 12 part numbers, we had one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to this day, everyone uses that one part nowadays, by the way.
Gotcha.
So, so we took, at the time I took like 600 part numbers down to 400. So it created a kind of a firestorm where, once this got out and we started growing it, our competitors were putting out press releases saying, don't use Auto Specialty master cylinders, you'll die. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah,
but so that's where the whole thing really took off. And it was after that Auto Specialty just really took off. So between, us being able to source parts that no one else had, and us being able to consolidate where no one else was, it really that's really what cemented our name in that business.
Got it. So did you later on sell Auto Specialty?
Yeah, so we grew it, and actually, so this was in the mid '80s. We sold Auto Specialty in 1996. We sold that to, well, we sold it to Kelsey Hayes, who were right at that very moment being bought up by Lucas, and then who just right after that got bought up by TRW. So it was a
Yeah.
pretty big firestorm going on there, which is really why, with all the commotion, I decided to leave that
Got it.
company.
So then you did you hang out for a little while, or did you immediately start another company?
Well, I had a 2-year non-compete from the time I left. So I sold in '96, I left in '98, and I was basically twiddling my thumbs for 2 years.
Yeah, got it.
And as a young man then, my 30s, and it was just driving me nuts, to be retired, so to speak. So
Sure.
yeah, I was chomping at the bit to start Centric. And so literally on the second anniversary of that non-compete date, I announced the formation of Centric Parts.
Got it. Yeah. So when you started that up, was it specifically friction, or was it all braking? Was it just like high performance? Like what was the I guess the focus when you first started with Centric?
Okay, well, without getting things too complicated, actually there was I skipped a little bit of that. So, because I did co-found StopTech.
Stop Tech. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so StopTech was actually co-founded with me, Steve Ruiz, and Bob Lee in 1999. And to do that, even though it was high performance braking, I had to get permission from, I believe, Lucas at the time, to allow me to do that. And because it wasn't an area of braking that they were involved in, they signed off on it. So I was able to start StopTech.
Got it.
Yeah, but I was, it wasn't, look, I love racing, I love high performance, but, I also just love the activity of the replacement parts business. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much going on, there's so many people involved,
Mhm.
and performance braking is a great niche, and it was fun, but I just I like the activity
Yeah.
of the larger brake volume.
Got it. So then you grew Centric to a pretty fairly large, I mean, obviously a well-known name within the aftermarket industry.
Well, we've kind of picked up where we all left off, because much of the group came over from Auto Specialty at the time to Centric,
Mm-hmm.
and one by one, well, there were certain co-founders with me. Principal among those was Dan Lelchuk. He was my partner at a significant partner. That sounds funny, but he and I were really did kind of the team that formed the team that built
Yeah.
that company up, and we did a really good job. We had great people and customers that were really loyal to us and followed us, just because of the simple things that we did. We basically, look, we're just a vessel providing best products and services to customers, and how do you do that? Well, we just did that.